Welcome back to Close Up. We're back on the campaign trail now and heading to the 1st Congressional District. Republicans want a win in CD1, and 2026 offers the opportunity of an open seat. One of the GOP contenders joins us this morning, Melissa Bailey. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks so much, Adam. Excited to be back.
So you've had months and months now on the campaign trail, getting to see GOP voters up close and personal. What is the core conservative voter in CD1 looking for right now in a candidate?
Thank you, Adam. Well, we are looking for a change, certainly, in Washington. We want voters that represent New Hampshire values like we're seeing right here in our state. Candidates who will protect our money, protect our communities, protect our children. That's what I'm hearing from Granite Staters every day. And one thing that people are frustrated with is what Washington is doing. We don't trust what's going on in Washington. We hear about fraud every single day. And it's maddening that our money is lining the pockets of these fraudsters. And so we need a real change. We need someone that will go to Washington and be really fiscally responsible and that will go after that fraud. And that's where I am a different kind of candidate. My background in finance and accounting as a CPA and as a financial auditor, I have exactly the skills that are needed in Washington to fight this fraud, from financial audits to having a deep knowledge and understanding of budgeting and financial statements. That's exactly what we need. And when I began my career, Adam, as a financial auditor, it was right after the Enron scandal. When Sarbanes-Oxley was being rolled out. So I spent years testing and implementing controls, and that's exactly what we need in Washington. So those are the skills that I will bring with me to help make life more affordable here for Granite State families, because we know if we want to really focus on affordability, it means taking an axe to the reckless spending in Washington and draining these fraud factories that are stealing our resources.
And obviously there's that Medicaid debacle in Minnesota. Do you think there are similar but maybe smaller problems here in New Hampshire?
Well, we're just beginning to scratch the surface when it comes to fraud. Minnesota, California, Maine, Massachusetts, the list grows longer every single day because these aren't isolated incidents. Every time Washington creates another program, the fraud gets bigger and bigger until it's a machine of waste and theft. Big government is the fuel and our money is what it burns. So what we need is real accountability and discipline to ensure that it's not happening. And I find it interesting that the Democrats don't have any questions about this, that they're not even asking how this happened or demanding real controls be put in place to stop it. And that's what I will do when I'm in Washington.
In terms of questioning Democrats, if you end up being the nominee in this district, the front runner on the Democratic side is Stefany Shaheen.
Yeah.
How would you take her on? Obviously, that's a big political name here in New Hampshire.
Yeah, well, I think people are ready for a change. They don't want just the next name in a political dynasty. And for Stefany Shaheen and for any Democrat, I think the problem is that their platform has completely failed the people of New Hampshire. They are more about illegal immigrants than Americans. They want to increase taxes and make life more expensive in every way. They want to take away our parental rights. They want boys in our girls' spaces. And they're not about law and order or protecting our police officers. So everything they're pushing is against our Granite State values. I am all about our live free or die lifestyle. Freedom is a gift, and I will be protecting that for us here in the Granite State.
Let's move to the war in Iran. President Trump ran on America First. How is this conflict America First?
Yeah, America First doesn't mean America only. It means protecting our interests and American lives all around the world. And I trust our commander-in-chief. This isn't about beginning a war. It's about ending a conflict that has been going on my entire life. I was born in 1979, the very year that this murderous regime took power in Iran. And so President Trump took a strong, decisive action when the opportunity came up. And it's moving quickly. Our military is incredible, the best in the world. And I'm encouraged by what we've seen happen so far. We're only 2 weeks in at this point, and hopefully we move quickly through this as is expected. We need to stick to the clear objectives that President Trump has laid out, destroying Iran's nuclear capabilities, their missile capabilities, and their Navy, and we need to ensure that they're not exporting terror all around the world.
He's also said unconditional surrender, though. So how far should America be willing to commit to make something like that happen?
Yeah, I think unconditional surrender, they've spoken to that a little bit, that it doesn't mean they have to say unconditional surrender, but certainly we are heading in that direction. We are seeing that their missile capability, for example, has been greatly deteriorated, and there is a case to be made that we're involved in these airstrikes, and we're involved to help ensure that this regime is crippled, and our allies in the area, maybe they're longer than we are, but our involvement is certainly going to be limited and sticking to those objectives that President Trump laid out.
And sticking to objectives, the president has set a timeline of this 4 to 5, 6 weeks or so. If it goes beyond that, Are you okay with that?
Well, I think that he hasn't given exact answers because he's not going to give his playbook to the enemy. So I trust that our commander-in-chief, and I trust what our military leaders are saying, that this is going to move quickly.
Do you think this has to be the new normal, though? No, obviously we've kind of knocked them down.
Yeah.
Are we going to have to conduct airstrikes against Iran now on a decade basis just to make sure they can't get back at us?
No, that's exactly why we need to take out this regime, and we need to cripple their capabilities so that we're not right back here. That's what we're all hoping from this, Adam, is to have lasting peace. That would be what success looks like.
The Washington Post is reporting that Russia is providing intelligence to Iran to help them attack American facilities. But now we see economic sanctions are being lifted on Russian oils to try and ease some of the global panic, if you will, over those oil prices. Are you okay with that, being able to sort of work with Russia while they are not necessarily on our side on the battlefield?
No, I don't think we need to be working with Russia, but gas prices obviously are an issue. And to Granite Staters that are pulling up to that gas pump and seeing the increasing prices, I understand your frustration because it feels too familiar. We remember under Joe Biden when gas prices were nearly $5 for weeks and weeks on end, and this is different. These are temporary increases, and I'm confident that as we move forward in this conflict and as the Strait of Hormuz opens up, that gas prices will come back down.
Let's move back to Congress and the Save America Act. Obviously, you're looking to go to Congress, and it's in the Senate right now, but do you think the Senate should change its rules to make sure this passes?
Adam, this is exactly why I'm running. We are so tired of political games. The filibuster is a political football that gets thrown back and forth every time power changes hands, and we're tired of it. We just want legislation to happen. We want safe and secure elections. They are the bedrock of our democratic republic. And so I think that Democrats and Republicans should decide together if they want to change the filibuster from just a simple rule in the Senate to enshrine it in law. And if they agree, they should do that. And if they don't, then we should just abolish it. So it's not all about political games, but we can focus on legislation happening, about them doing their job. And in this case, the Save America Act is extremely important. People all across the Granite State tell me this every day, that we want safe and secure elections. We have them here in our state, and it's just putting everyone else on a level playing field with what we already do here so that our voices aren't being canceled out.
What about U.S. citizens who are qualified voters who might not have these documents, or they have a different last name now, a maiden name that was one thing on the birth certificate and now it's something different?
Yeah.
A lot of Republicans, I've heard them kind of wave off these concerns, but a lot of people could end up not being able to vote who should be able to vote here.
I think it's just more excuses. I think more people are disenfranchised when they see what is going on in our country and they worry about their voice being canceled out. We saw a wide open border under Joe Biden for 4 years, millions and millions of people pouring in. We don't know who they are. We don't even know how many, but we know states like California issue them driver's licenses. We know that they mail ballots to every household, and that's not fair for Granite State voters. So I am more worried about the voters who follow the rules already being disenfranchised.
Should the federal government do anything to try and assist those people, again, who are qualified voters who might have trouble getting those documents?
Yes, I think that there will be processes put in place. The first step is to pass the Save America Act, and then we look at implementing it.
All right, Melissa Bailey, thanks for joining us on Close Up. We'll see you out there on the trail.
Okay, thank you.